Yep. All right, everyone. Welcome to the After Action Review Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Rodriguez, and it is 5:30 in the morning, which for some of you is the pre-start of your day. But for my guest, Bia Brown, we're actually at the end of her day, and certainly not at the end of mine. I just woke up a couple of minutes ago. I had a long drive back from North Carolina yesterday. So this is kind of my morning stand to, and I'm starting my morning off right, having an interview with a veteran entrepreneur. And without any further ado, Bia Brown joins me. Bia, how are you this morning?
Pretty good, Rod. How's it going on your end?
Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful morning here in Reston. So yep. Tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me what's going on.
All right. Well, I'm Bia Brown. I'm 23. I've been in the Navy since I was 17. So far, I've been in about 6 years in the reserve and Master at Arms. Still got many more years to go. U.S. Navy all the way. Couldn't get any better. Right now, I live in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I go to Oklahoma State University. I got about a year left until I finish my bachelor's in entrepreneurship. Nice. So far, I'm working on my writing skills. I published my first book this year back in March called How to Be Charlie 1, Simply Being a Young Adult in an Adult World. And that's really kickstarted my entrepreneurial skills off for me, and I'm learning every day as it goes.
That's terrific, and I want to apologize for such a terrible segue into your introduction. I'm drinking my coffee this morning. I'm waking up. But I've been actually, to be honest with you, I've been very excited about this interview, and I know we had to postpone it a day, mostly because the conversation that we had I thought was so good. So prior to this interview, we talked a little bit about a couple of different things, and mostly on your book. And I found that conversation, and I don't know how you felt about it, because when I walked away from it, I got a lot out of our conversation. Yeah. The biggest takeaway for me was the difficulty involved in writing. And it's writing is something I've tried with little to no success. But to see somebody give it the old shot and do well, and actually produce something, to me, that was very impressive. Can you take me through what this book is about and how you came to it?
So How to Be Charlie 1, I'm just going to refer to that so I don't have to go through the whole title every time. But it originally started as a school project. My original prompt was to do a 90-second project or 90-second video over things that really bugged me. So it always bugged me that, hey, there's certain stuff that I didn't learn in high school, and I went to high school for 4 years straight. And so after I did my video, my teacher said, good job. And at the very end, he tacked in, hey, I want to see a published and copyrighted book at the end of it. Being a veteran, of course, we never say no to a challenge. So, of course, I was like, challenge accepted. I'm writing a book. 100%, I'm not the biggest reader ever. So this is stepping into new territory just for me. But as I started writing and gathering everything, the book actually turned into something so much more. It's now my everything. I wake up and eat, sleep, and breathe book. And so right now I am writing a blog at howtobecharlie1.com, and it goes through a really detailed process from beginning to end of how I wrote my book.
Tell me a little bit about what is it? What is Charlie 1?
Charlie 1. So I was deployed last year in Bahrain, 2016, and my squad's name was Charlie 1. I was in charge of 6 people. I was the 7th person, but everybody came from a different background and ages from youngest to oldest. And so, you spend 11 months with people for 12 hours a day. For 7 days a week, you have time to sit down and talk about a lot. So the book basically goes through, or I have a line in the book that says, most of the deployment, I would drink a lot and save a little bit. And after a while, I realized that, hey, my buddies weren't really drinking with me as much. Well, they were saving up for, houses, a new car, investment properties and stuff like that. And it finally clicked with me that, hey, I need to be like the rest of my team. I need to get like Charlie One and get my act together and go home so I can make something of myself. So I named the book How to Be Charlie One because I want to share with people that, you can be financially stable as a young adult and be like Charlie One and have a mentality of how we thought as a team.
So you have this school project, and your teacher challenges you, your professor challenges you to write a book, essentially. And you said, "Yeah, no problem. I'm going to do that."
Yeah, said it very nonchalant, more so shaking in my boots.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. That's quite the endeavor to take on. I mean, one thing is being an entrepreneur. Another thing is writing a book. Again, that's me though. I've never understood how people can sit down and just be like, I'm writing a book. I can barely sit down and write a paper. So tell me about that challenge of writing a book. So you commit to your professor saying, I'm going to do this. And then you sat down and did it. But how did you do that? Take me through the process of the method that you use to write a book that seems to be something that most of us can't do.
So I'll start off with, I originally told my professor, sure, I'll write a book. And I didn't speak to him for the rest of the semester about it. I didn't have any book mentors, or I didn't have anybody to go to ask anything like that. So, I had a lot of challenges. I had a lot of obstacles to face of a blank slate. So I readily, I like to write papers essentially. So figuring out how to organize the book was not really a difficult thing, but it was something I really had to dig and search for. So I had a lot of YouTube hours. I had a lot of Googling hours trying to figure out, the funding. Where am I going to get the funding for the book? Definitely the publishing. How do I publish a book? Or you always hear about people that go to a publishing company and get denied, 10 and 12 times. There is also the cover art. I know how to draw a little bit, but definitely don't know how to make a book cover, and I definitely don't have the programs to do a book cover. Lastly was the editing. Sure, I can write and I can read my own stuff, but finding an editor, I didn't know anything about that. So originally I started out with, every day I would kind of write my own, write something about each chapter. I finally said that I would interview somebody local in Stillwater for each chapter. I really wanted to keep everything local just because as an entrepreneur, businesses support businesses. For the funding, I found a website called Kickstarter. I don't know if you are familiar with Kickstarter, but Kickstarter is basically crowdsourcing for businesses, ideas, and stuff like that. A lot of times you hear of Kickstarter for larger companies that do, $500,000 or $1 million. But I originally started with Kickstarter, and I had set my goal for $1,000 to cover, my books, my rewards, my funding, any other expenses that would pop up. I ended my Kickstarter with $1,300. For publishing, I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube. On YouTube, I found that there's about 3 or 4 good free publishing companies online, but the best one I found was CreateSpace. And CreateSpace.com is a publishing company through Amazon. But when you publish on CreateSpace, you upload your own manuscript and you upload your own cover art, and CreateSpace will publish it on Amazon for you, and it would also publish it on Kindle for you. So that was a really big pro for me. That's why I use CreateSpace. Secondly, I was still struggling with the cover art part as far as the cover for the book. And CreateSpace they have like a service that'll do your cover, but it costs at least $400. That's just the bare minimum. Wow. And I was thinking like, there's no way that I'm going to spend $400 on just the cover for my book.
Right.
So, with that being one of my final things, I was, kind of digging around online as like, hey, as a kid or as a high school student, I used to be really big into graphic design. And so I was asking all my Facebook friends, hey, do you guys still mess with Photoshop anymore? And, now all of my friends are 24, 25. Everybody's like, no, I'm working. I'm doing my own job now. So I ended up Googling there's only 2 shops in Stillwater that really do graphic design for other people. And I messaged one guy and he's like, yep, let's meet up and tell me about what designs you want. I met up with them, told him my story, while I was writing the book. And he was like, 100%, I love your story. I'll charge you $50 for it. And I'm just like, $50 versus $400, I'll take it. I don't care what you do with it.
That's a good discount.
So, yeah, definitely. So I was super happy about that. And right at the last part of my book, I had to go on AT orders for training in California. And so I had to go there for about a month. And I was right in the middle of my school semester. So I'm like, I'm writing a book. I got classes, I'm already stressed out, but now I got to leave, uproot your life and just go with the Navy for a little bit. So that Wednesday, I got off work at 8 o'clock that morning, and that following Friday, I was flying out. So that Wednesday morning, I got off at 8. I went home, changed my clothes, and I had 5 interviews that I wanted to go do. And so I, put on a nice button-up shirt, tried to look fairly presentable. I went to the 5 businesses I wanted to, and I had 15 questions for each person. Mm-hmm. And I approached them, hey, my name is Bia Brown. Shake hands. This is what I'm doing. The only thing I ask you about these questions is, answer them simplicitly, no definitions, and that's it. So I got that done, typed it all up, and while I was on AT orders, I was, talking to my E6 that, hey, I'm writing the book. I'm looking for somebody to edit it. This will be my last thing. And he just so happened to tell me, well, hey, my wife is really big into writing and, editing. Shoot my wife an email. And lo and behold, that was the last piece to my book. His wife edited for me with a 12-hour turnaround, and she wouldn't even take any money from me. And those were like the biggest things of how I wrote my book. So
you talked about the fact that this is something you've never written a book before.
Never.
And you jumped on the idea and said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to interview these people. You started the writing process. Did you go to any websites on how to write? I know when I take on a new project, I usually hit the old Googling machine. And I will type in something as simple as, how do you do? So did you do that? Did you consult with CW5? Well, CW5 Google. And, how do you write?
I Googled a lot of questions. Like I said before, so I actually enjoy writing, especially like writing papers. That's, most people dread that in college. It's like, oh my gosh, I have a 5-page paper to write. And I'm just kind of like, sweet, I have a 5-page paper to write. That's easy. So putting together the book wasn't actually the hard part for me. And especially since I had my research and, I had to put it together, I thought that was fairly, like I said, the easy part. That was actually fun. So I didn't have to really go to any websites to learn how to write. It was more so just the fundamentals of getting a book together. And so besides that, the most websites I did visit for the book would be learning how to run a successful Kickstarter campaign. Actually, in my one of my last blogs, I think it was my log number 6, I actually go over the 3 steps to do a successful Kickstarter campaign.
So you kept the blog during this whole process?
No, actually, I went kind of backwards for it. So for a while, I had my Kickstarter set up, and that was actually going really good. And then after that, I was just kind of stuck. I'm like, how do I have a social media for a book? I'm not a Harry Potter. I don't have a big fan base. What do I need? And in one of the articles I read for a Kickstarter campaign is, get a Facebook page. And I was like, you can have a Facebook page for a book? Yeah, you can. So I actually realized that, and I set up my Facebook page, and apparently there's like two people actually looking for a Facebook page for me. So I was like, well, I know I got that one set up good. So once I got my Facebook page set up, I started posting content to there so people can follow and keep up. And so from that, I was reading some more articles about, okay, how do I gain readers and gain interest and keep people interested in my book? And one of the articles said, you have to write more. The only way to get better at writing is to write more. And so I was like, okay, I need a blog. Well, what do I blog about if I'm not going to blog about my book? And so it was like, hey, I think it would be really interesting and a good way for me to get my story out is I'm going to blog about how I wrote a book. And not just how I wrote a book, but just how I wrote a book with no resources, really, no mentorships or anybody to go off a back of.
So for a lot of people, just starting a blog itself is a challenge.
Yeah.
That is almost like, for some people, that is writing a book, and that's sitting down and doing either a video blog or written blog. But you took on a blog and writing a book.
I had to go from there. When you write a book, you can't get people to read.
Right.
And my book is fairly short. It's only 48 pages, so it's not something that's going to take long. But I needed something to interest my readers and keep them interested and following me as an author until I produce my second book.
It's interesting because when we talked about this before, when we first got connected over this book, and I remember the way we got connected was fun. It was funny because you plugged your book in the comment section of one of my posts.
Right. And actually, for that video, I connected with you for the same reason, is because that particular video you were talking about how most of the military Facebook pages or entrepreneurship pages were just like, hey, come to my pyramid scheme. And for me, when I joined that same military entrepreneurship page, it was like, I'm looking for something other than the pyramid scheme. I'm looking for people that actually have a brick and mortar business or something along those lines.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I mean, I think, and you saw the same ads, like, I'm looking for 5 highly motivated people to join my team. It's like, that's a scam. So you mentioned the social media aspect of this, and you hit on something that I've seen, and I felt personally myself when I was starting up the After Action Review, and that is a sense of self-worth, a sense of validation when it comes to establishing these social media presences. You said, do you even have a Facebook page for a book? And I felt that way about just about every part of this process. Like, it's almost as if I'm not good enough to have that. Like, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's definitely how I felt in the beginning. Is like, sure, I created my Facebook page, which is great and dandy because all the people that are my friends on it, of course, they're going to like it and be friendly. They're just giving support from it. But it's like, how do I engage other people that aren't my friends to like my Facebook page? So with my Facebook page, I was able to run ads on Facebook, and that's actually helped a lot of people with my page. I did a promotional video when I did my Kickstarter. I did my video as an ad, which it got 1,200 views, which is like the most views I've ever received in my life for anything. But that definitely helped, with my Facebook page and definitely just getting my book out there, getting my name out there.
Now, Kickstarter is something that, I think Kickstarter falls into that category of, that's for them. That's for those other guys. That's for those tech guys. That's for, if I'm starting up, I'm going to sell this thing. I'm going to sell this widget. I'm going to show the widget and people will buy it or people will invest in it or whatever. Yeah. Were you at all intimidated by starting a Kickstarter campaign, and how did you find that process to be for you?
I was 50-50 about Kickstarter. The first 50, the good half of it was, I know people are going to donate for me, such as friends and family. I already had supporters before I even put the page up. So the Kickstarter was basically to see how well can I market myself to other people. Secondly, Kickstarter has a finesse to it, and I talk about this in my blog. There's a finesse to running a Kickstarter. So when you create a Kickstarter page, they have you fill in all the boxes of what are you selling or what are you trying to fund, what's it about, and the last thing on there is, what are the challenges that you face. So when you start a Kickstarter, it's like you're essentially putting yourself out there. And so I did a little bit of research before I started my page. Is Kickstarter is not for the tech people. It's not for only people in California. So there's other people that are funding books, are funding T-shirts, clothing, you name it, it's on there. You just have to find it. So that was the 50% that I was okay with it. The 50% that I was nervous and kind of skeptical about was to finesse that Kickstarter, you need a video. You need to put yourself out there and look professional when you're doing this, because you're not only showing your friends and family, but you're sending people a link to a website that don't know you. So my biggest thing was I don't have a camera. I don't have no film crew. I barely have friends that I can connect with to be like, hey, hold this for me. Right. So I have a GoPro, and that's about all I got. So I practiced with my GoPro a little bit. I played tackle football on a women's league down here in Oklahoma City. And so, I took my camera to practice one day, took a couple shots. I didn't have any editing software at the time. That was another YouTube video, what's the best free editing software? So, I downloaded that. And so I edited my first video of my practice with my football team. And I'm like, okay, I got the hang of this. So I went outside, and there I am, with my GoPro trying to, record myself of, hey, my name is Bia Brown, and I'm writing my first book, How to Be Charlie 1, Simply Being a Young Adult in an Adult World. I'm looking for funding on Kickstarter, blah, 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 blah. So once I got that video out there, I felt a little bit better and a little more confident that, I'm looking professional. And the way Kickstarter works is you have to run your campaign for at least 30 days. If you stop it early, then you don't get your money. If you don't raise all your money, you don't get your money. So it's a 50-50 in between there.
Well, like I said, pretty nerve-wracking, actually.
A little bit. So, immediately, I had a couple $100 from friends and family, and it's one of those things I read in an article about Kickstarter is if you're feeling like you're tired of talking about your Kickstarter campaign, keep talking about it. That means you're not talking about it enough. And actually, I'll say my one success story from the Kickstarter campaign was, like I said, I was flying out to California for my training. And so I had printed these little business cards, which I called my Kickstarter cards, of just, hey, I talked to random people about my book, slip you my card. If you want to donate, here's the link, right? I just so happened to sit between these two little sweet ladies on the airplane. One was a middle-aged lady, another one was a little bit older. So, you sit there and have a little chatty airplane talk of, hey, what you doing, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the flight, I slipped both of them one of my cards. They said, good job, kid, keep going about it. And I think like a week or two later, one of the ladies, the older lady from Louisiana, she actually donated $100 to my campaign. And I was just like, oh, wow, from a lady that I just met off an airplane.
That's awesome.
Donate $100. So that's my success story up there.
So I think Kickstarter is another one of those intimidating systems, one of those intimidating methods that we use to raise funds.
Yeah.
To support our veteran entrepreneurship that I think a lot of vets are intimidated by. I just finished talking to a vet yesterday, actually. Maybe it was, whatever. So yeah, I finished talking to a vet, and he seemed somewhat intimidated by the whole technology process. The thing that kept coming up was, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do the Twitter. I don't know how to set up a Facebook page. And I think Kickstarter, again, is, it is somewhat of an intimidating process. Did you find it was a steep learning curve? And what was your emotional response to some of this stuff? I mean, you're taking all these very these very adventurous steps that you've never done this before. How frightening was that for you?
So from the Kickstarter, from the technological standpoint, it really wasn't that bad. To me, their website is user friendly. Once again, I'm 23, so I'm kind of a technology based generation anyway. So, like I said, to me, everything was a simple upload here, click here type of thing that wasn't too bad. I'll say the most technological thing that I had to work with was the formatting for the book for CreateSpace. That did take me, a couple hours to learn. As far as like my emotional aspect of it, I was genuinely pretty happy and excited for all of it. As an entrepreneur, you just get excited to do more and more for your own business, or to see your own creation come alive. And so, as I'm searching over here and I'm searching over there, it was really cool to see that, okay, hey, I got a little bit over here and a little bit over here, and it's actually working together good. The only time that I was really just, stressed out and actually nervous of, hey, I probably can't do this, was definitely that first day of, okay, what do I need to write a book? I had to figure out, what do I need to write a book?
Right.
I talk about it in my blog. The first thing was, I hate myself on camera. I look awful. Two, my family has always said that, when I talk, I don't move my mouth. And so I recorded myself a couple of times, and I'm like, yeah, my mouth actually looks like I have a stroke. Like, that's awful. And then three, it was like, I was like, I don't have a professional camera or a digital recorder or anything. And then four, the biggest thing was, I definitely don't have any editing software. As you see, I've overcome all of those problems, but those are the four biggest things that I was just like, I can pretty much quit right now. I don't know if I can do this, but once again, I accepted the challenge, and I'm going to at least put my best foot forward. After that, like I said, I was pretty happy through most of it. The only other nerve-wracking part was coming down to the end of trying to find somebody to edit it. I didn't have $2,000 for anybody to edit it. I'm running out of friends and family to ask, or they're just not responding. Okay, what do I do next? And it just so happened that, the lady ended up editing for me.
So it sounds like the two types of challenges that you were really facing is some insecurity on your part.
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there. And I think that's an insecurity we all share. I mean, it's so funny that we'll do these Instagram videos of us going out.
Yeah.
We'll go Facebook Live when we're with our friends. But to do that for a business and put yourself out there, it's almost kind of like, I remember Will Ferrell in the movie. He's like, what do I do with my hands?
It was kind of like that.
Right? So, and the other piece is the resources piece. And I think, again, we talked about that a little bit also, how that is a very common story is, I don't have software. I don't know how to edit. I don't have these pieces. I think I told you about like the first video that I put out, or the first piece of audio that I put out was terrible. I didn't know how to do an interview. I didn't know how to set up my equipment. I had a microphone that I bought off of Craigslist from a crackhead who self-professed he could, quote, I rap like garbage. So I'm selling my mic, which is fine. I mean, I got a great deal on a mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely one of those experiences where I didn't know what I was doing, and you're going to gain more experience. As you were writing your book, did you have a sense, did you feel like an entrepreneur? Did you feel like this is an entrepreneurial endeavor? This is a business that I'm putting out, or did it feel maybe different?
It was a little bit of both. So to go back on what you said of, the resources part, that was the biggest thing of that leap of, I'm doing this and I don't know anybody else who's ever done this before. So that was definitely like treading, my own water and create my own path. And As far as, let's see, is creating my own, the part of it, it was pretty, I don't know.
So I guess when we talked, you had mentioned, so you're writing this book and it didn't really strike you as a business. You're answering the call, the challenge of writing a book.
Yeah. So, so to answer that, when I first got the challenge, no, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, hey, I'm going to accept this challenge. I'm going to write the book.
Right.
As I was getting more into the interviews and to the facts of it, like I said, I'm in my senior year of my entrepreneurship degree. So, I was always been kind of looking for what can I work on at home, what can be my little project that I can work to build. And so at the time I was like, okay, sweet, this is going to be my entrepreneurial project. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to sell a book and I'm going to sell the book as best as I can. Well, now that I've written the book and I sold the book, that's great and dandy. I thought the hardest part was writing it. No, the hardest part is selling the book. Now, like as we spoke earlier, I'm kind of at this point of rebranding, kind of, how can I make this book into a business? And I did Google that one because I'm trying to figure out how do you make a book into a business? It's one of those unanswered questions that I've never asked myself before, which I'm still learning about myself. So I definitely have, some things up my sleeve, what we've talked about. And, now that I've written it and I tried to sell it, I'm still selling it, I think I can make this into a longevity business, not just, hey, I, published a couple of books, here you go.
So we had talked writing this book, it's how long? 48 pages, you said?
Right.
So it's not an especially long book.
No.
But I think what makes a difference is it does have beginning, middle, and end.
Mm-hmm.
It starts and it concludes, which is, again, something that most people can't even get to. We maybe get to the middle part and then it's like done. I can't go any further. What have you learned from writing this book that you're taking with you into book number 2?
From writing this book, I definitely learned time is a factor. Time is a big factor. Like I said, so for the first book, I wrote it really quickly because I wanted to turn it into my teacher and show him that, hey, challenge accepted and it's completed. So for the second book, I'm definitely going to take my time with it. I'll be doing some updated videos and just taking my followers and my readers of how I'm writing the second book. I definitely want to get their input on it. Even it just from it being published for 2 months and kind of sit back and read it myself. My second book is definitely going to be a little bit longer as far as, going in a little bit more in depth for my readers. The first book is just gave everybody just a taste of, hey, this is what you should do. This is how you could go about it. But for the second one, I do want to go in depth and give a little bit more details of each chapter. For that, also from the first book, I'm going to need a lot more interviews. I stopped at a random bookstore and, just try to pry some information from an old guy. And he told me, I told him about my book and told him that, hey, I interviewed one person for each chapter. And the first thing out of his mouth was, you're going to need 50 more interviews. And I was just like, all right, rude. Thanks for that. But sure, I'll get some more interviews. But
that's good info. That's pretty honest feedback.
Exactly. And he was just a brutally honest old guy, which, that's the kind of information that people need nowadays. And so for the second book, I'm not just going to stop at 5 interviews. I'm going to try and interview as many people as I can, because the more people I interview, the more content I can put in my book, the more knowledge I can help people understand and get that financial stability that I'm trying to share with everybody.
and that's something we have to get away from. Is it's almost like a mom effect, where you
Yeah.
hear your mom your picture, and you're like, look what I did, and she's like, oh, that's the most amazing thing. Put that on the fridge. That's beautiful.
You're right.
You feel really good about it, but the fact is, to anybody else outside of the sphere of mom, it could be a pile of hot garbage. It could be.
Exactly.
We're sitting there thinking this is wonderful. Going back to my own experience with that, I've always been my own worst enemy, my own worst critic, which is why a lot of things never launched. I do it, I come back, and I'm like, oh, bleh, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
But you do have to fight that, because the people around you are going to support you. They're going to love what you're doing. And
Exactly.
the most critical feedback from the people that really have your best that they think they have your best interest at mind. They're trying to be friendly. They're trying to be great. They're trying to be good for you and love you. But we all need that old man at some point in our creative development to go, you need more. You need less.
Exactly.
Garbage. Because that's we're trying to sharpen the blade for our audience.
Yeah.
And they are going to be the market's going to decide ultimately whether or not you're going to be successful.
And when you say that, that's basically like that comes from the military standpoint of, hey, your sergeant or whatever is going to tell you that you did a really crappy job, and I'm going to tell you how crappy you did your job, and you're going to go fix it. And I don't care if I hurt your feelings or you take criticism very well. This is what I'm telling you, and you need to go do it. And so that's kind of what the old guy did for my book. It was just kind of like, he didn't even read it. He didn't even look at the book. But he, just from talking to me, he said, hey, you're going to need more interviews. Keep going. He did tell me this. He was just like, it's probably going to take you 10 years for you to be a half decent author to sell any type of book. And I was just like, once again, I was just kind of a shock of like, gosh, this dude is just rude. But he's like, I've been in the book business for 30 years. I've seen anything and everything walk through here. All right, I'm going to take your word for it. I'm going to do the best I can. At the end of it, he was like, yeah, you seem really successful. You keep doing, you keep pushing. You're out here looking for opportunities. You're going to do fine, kid. Don't worry. So he did tell me to come back and see him. So I'll probably post a blog or something about
there's challenge number 2.
Yeah, how I see with him.
I think that's interesting because a lot of and I think a lot of anybody that's going into entrepreneurship, there is a tendency for us to hold ourselves to the same standard as the people that have inspired us to jump into these things.
Yeah.
I am not Joe Rogan. I am not, I'm not the fighter and the kid, and I'm certainly I'm not a famous podcaster.
Right.
You're not a famous author. You're not the lady who writes Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Those people might have inspired us to come out here and do these things or whatnot. But to say that our first book is going to be the top 10 bestseller, or the first podcast you're going to put out, or the first widget you produce is going to change the world or inspire minds. There are some people that have done that. First book I wrote, blew up and everybody loved it. But those are anomalies. Those are complete anomalies.
Yeah, it's like
we don't see the work that came from behind that too.
The guy at the bookstore, he told me this one thing. I can't remember the author that he used, but he said the author is about as big as Stephen King, basically, just sold millions and millions of books. The author, he wrote his first book, went through a publishing company. After about his 10th time, he finally got it published. He sold about 5,000 copies. And he said, 5,000 copies isn't nothing when you should be selling millions. So the publishing company dropped him. The guy ended up writing, his second, third, and fourth book. And his fifth book, he actually, was selling it out of his trunk, in New York somewhere. And it just so happened that a publisher, picked it up, and it just that was his lucky break on his fifth book. He sold millions and millions of copies. So he's like, hey, kid, you're going to put in the hard work and the dedication for it, but your first book isn't going to be it. Your second book isn't going to be it. But you will build your credibility with the more that you write. You will learn about the business and the process of it.
Well, absolutely. And credibility is the grind.
Yeah.
What we're doing right now, this is part, and I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs get that. They think, and again, I might be wrong on this. I'm always willing to accept I could be wrong, but
right.
There is this general feeling, and again, you've seen these Facebook pages, you've seen the conversations. There's a sense that once I do this, once I make this widget, it's all going to change. All I got to do is make it, and the moment the market sees it, they smell it, they will come in droves. And I'm telling you, it doesn't work that way. You know this for a fact now. You've written your book. I've got, I've been into the podcast thing for a hot bit now. Well, maybe not even a hot bit. I shouldn't even say that. Compared to some of these other guys, you and I are like in the infant stage. Like,
oh yeah,
we're crawling around. Some of these guys are sprinting and running. It's the grind. It's the daily process that we are going to be able to present to those future investors, to the people who are going to be there. I believe there's a critical moment where time and effort are going to intersect.
Yeah.
And there's going to be the spot right there where somebody is going to be the gatekeeper. Now, whether it's a publisher, whether it's an investor, there's going to be a moment where we have to show all our work. Kind of like when you're in school, right? And you got to show the teacher all the math work that you did.
Right.
I know how to do it. Why did I have to do this 50 times? That's what you're doing. You're showing the grind. Like, look
exactly.
at what we're going to have to do that at some point. So for the guy who made this wonderful widget, but he didn't do any content. He didn't do a blog. He didn't do the Twitter. He didn't do the Facebook. He just there's like, he may have grinded, but because he didn't show it. He didn't show his work.
And that's that goes back to, like, how do I expand my book? How do I expand my brand of Charlie One? That's where, like you said, that's where my blogging comes into. For one, for me, it's, me continuing learning on how to write. Two, I like to blog because it's all the stuff that I can't say in a book or on my Facebook page. So if you really want to know the secret rough thoughts that I have, that's where it's going to be put on my blog. And then three, for me, it's a nice lineage of, say I don't ever make it famous, or I do 10, 12 years from now, I can go back and look at my first blog post and be like, that's what I was thinking. Or, hey, you can definitely see the change of my writing skills over the years.
You make a great point. You're leaving behind a legacy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because sometimes we start something and we end up somewhere completely different. You may start writing a book and you may end up doing podcasts, or I may end up doing podcasts and end up, with a widget, designing an app or something. But it's a journey that's going to take us to something. Just last night, I was talking to my girl about the fact that I have these ideas for other things other than podcasting, but I would never have reached those ideas had it not been for podcasting, for the people that I've met in podcasting. Those are the things that have really changed the game for me. And that comes back down to that legacy that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I don't think, my first book is going to be anything. And I don't think my second book is going to be the last thing I do. And I don't think the brand or the company of Charlie One is just going to be the last thing I do as an entrepreneur. I have at least a good 30, 40 business ideas out of just my college career. And I'm sure, eventually I will make one of them, or, one of them I'll put all my efforts into. But this is just the beginning for me. This is where, life has me going, and I'm going to run with it. run with it until I can't go no more.
I love it. So tell me, if I want to follow Bia Brown and her journey towards book number 2, how do I do that?
You can follow me. Biggest one I'm on right now is Facebook. It's facebook.com/howtobeCharlie1. I also have an Instagram page that I'm pretty active on with other authors, even trying to find local authors to connect with. Just Instagram at howtobeCharlie1. And once again, like I said, for my blog, howtobeCharlie1.com. Usually I kind of have all 3 of those linked together.
So how do you spell Charlie 1 for Facebook?
Charlie 1 is CHARLIE and 1 like the number 1, so ONE.
All right. Like that?
You got to add the how to be.
How to be?
Yeah, how to be Charlie 1.
See, I'm glad we're taking care of this right now. We're taking care of this right now. How to be Charlie 1.
Exactly. And so just like that, if you want to find anything, simply just go to Amazon for the first book, type in how to be Charlie 1 is the first thing that pops up. I'm pretty proud of that part too. But definitely, if anybody has any questions, email me, message me, Facebook, post a picture, anything like that. I'm a millennial. I'm always on the internet. I'll be glad to talk.
All right. Bia, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate you giving me your evening. And this is, I'll be honest with you, I love waking up to this kind of stuff. Being able to start my day thinking about my own podcast, my own journey, and then sharing that, having somebody share their moments with me.
Right.
It's the way you should start your morning. It is inspiring. It kickstarts your brain. That's what I'm really excited about, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience.
No problem. This is great for me. Hopefully I can meet with you again and tell you a little bit about my second book once I get it rolling a little bit.
Heck yeah. All right, Bia, thanks for joining me here.
All right, see you, man.
Later. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Bia Brown. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're not watching this live, I understand it's kind of early for some of y'all, but if you're watching this or listening to this on your podcast, make sure you find Bia, facebook.com/howtobeCharlie1. Bia wants you to be Charlie 1. I want to be Charlie 1. So let's get this done. Thanks again, everyone. You have a wonderful day.